anyone who makes the Saints 53 obviously is important. Let's start there. Surprises, most notable either cuts or makes from the 53.
Well, most notable is someone we actually talked about way back when camp started, or even before that, when I did an early projection, and you and me both agreed that Tommy Stevens would likely miss the roster. I thought maybe they might keep him just because they maybe could play with the numbers at running back and wide receiver, but instead they decided to cut him. So probably the most notable. I mean, the fact that they're going for now, like as in today, that might change tomorrow, with two punters, I think that's actually pretty amusing, but that'll flip-flop around and things. But no, I think when you look at the roster, you saw the Saints opt against some veteran players on the defensive line, like Mario Edwards and Marcus Hunt, and they went with Malcolm Roach instead, the undrafted guy from New Orleans and who went to Texas. And then I think instead of going with the veteran Benny Fowler, who had a good rapport with Breeze, they cut him and brought him back on the practice squad, but went with the undrafted rookie Marquez Callaway. And that's someone who I think they look at as a potential deep threat type of guy, special teams type of guy. So that's where his value comes in. And, the Saints also have just some versatility and can kind of gamble at wide receiver a little bit with him just because Ty Montgomery can be used as a wide receiver. Of course, Kamara, and now that you've got Emmanuel Sanders, Traquan Smith, Jared Cook, Michael Thomas, you've got a lot of options. So maybe you feel like you can take a little bit of a flyer on a guy that you feel like could be promising, like Callaway.
Do you follow up on Callaway, because I've whenever he signed as an undrafted free agent, highlighted him as the guy to watch because I watched him at Tennessee and he was an incredible game breaker. Is he a guy that you think they're just taking a flyer, or is he a guy who has a role in this offense as the take the top off a defense guy?
I can't see that quite yet.
Okay.
I still feel like they think Traquan Smith can do that, and they're going to probably sprinkle in Deontay Harris. But if he's on the team, a lot of it's because of special teams. So I'm curious just to see week one if he's active, if he's not. Because if he's active, he's going to be all over the special teams aspect. So I think we'll get a better idea once we get to week one what his role will actually be, as opposed to maybe he's just a flyer and he's just inactive every week, or does he have an actual role?
Give me some perspective here, Larry, because as we mentioned when we started, this is the first 53, like you mentioned, the two punters. It's never actually the final 53. They always wait for cuts, and then you sign and cut, release, and all. What type of movement should we expect this week up into kickoff with the Bucs as far as the Saints roster?
Well, I think the punter move will happen eventually. And you also have to remember that if you keep a veteran player and he makes it all the way through week one, then his salary is guaranteed the rest of the year. So I feel like the Saints went younger on some spots, and those guys might shift out, and they might have, say, Marcus Hunt move back up to the active roster, or Benny Fowler move back up to the active roster, and move some of those undrafted guys to the practice squad. So that would probably be some of the routes that I would see, and even Sean Payton alluded to it, that there's going to be so much movement there. And, the Saints, as I heard, they like to play games, whether it's with the roster or whether it's trying to pull an NBA sign and trade. Mickey Loomis going back to his short time doing some NBA wheeling and dealing. But, yeah, look, the Saints definitely try to manipulate rules as much as they possibly can.
He's on Twitter at Larry Holder, theathletic.com/New Orleans. One more on the 53. What about on the offensive line? Obviously, cutting Cameron Tom and signing him to the practice squad would be the most notable. Anything else there that stood out to you?
Look, Will Clapp keeps coming back. I had a feeling that he would. He'd be back on there, so that's a good sign for him. You look at someone like Derek Kelly, who was on the team last year as a practice squad guy, but he kind of made it through. Ethan Greenidge, who was on the roster the entire year, but never really active. I mean, the fact that he made it again, I think that's a good sign. But I think when you look at just the depth chart, the unofficial quote-unquote depth chart, that they're locking in McCoy at center, and then they're locking in Ruiz at right guard, and that makes sense to me. And so, the fact that they went 9 offensive linemen, that's probably one more than I thought they'd go. But I can understand logically why they would do that and maybe go one lighter somewhere else.
All right, Larry Holder is our guest. Let's move away from the 53, and we could talk a little bit about the depth chart that you just alluded to there, and also we'll obviously get to the Clowney and Kamara news as well. Let's look at that offensive depth chart. The thing that's going to stand out to most people, I think, is clearly that at quarterback they've got Taysom Hill as the number 2 behind Drew Brees and then Jameis Winston as the 3. Do you believe that if Brees bangs his head on Ndamukong Suh helmet on Sunday, that Taysom Hill's the guy that comes in?
Maybe for that game, but I would assume that, say, Jameis Winston is still that Teddy Bridgewater type of player. I think that putting Taysom Hill there, just because they probably feel like he has more of a command of the offense, and they can mix match in the other, but I still think that Jameis, in a pinch, in like a spot start, would come in and start. And now I would think you'd see way more Taysom at quarterback in this scenario than you would with Teddy Bridgewater in last year's scenario, where they really scaled back Taysom's snaps all over the map. And once Drew came back, it was more the regular Taysom role. I think they would probably play him more, just because they feel like they want to get him involved and they feel like he can play. But I still think, even though it says Taysom 2, Jameis 3, I'm thinking maybe in game they might go with Taysom just because they'd already have kind of a plan with him. But if you would go into another week, I still think Jameis would be that guy. Look, I could be wrong, but I still feel like that's the sense I get.
What's the latest you're hearing on Kamara and the possible deal?
Yeah, I would assume the deal would get done. The fact that he's back practicing and he's trying to diffuse the situation, saying that he was always there, he didn't hold out, this, that, and the other, tomato, potato, whatever. I feel like that a deal's going to get done. It will be a little north of, say, Joe Mixon, Derrick Henry. I always assumed in the end it would come up to like $14 million.
Wow.
Maybe it'll be a little bit less. I know you're not a fan of it. I've heard you $10.5 million. I think that's too low. I would have been fine with $13 million. Maybe give him a little bit more. But here's my argument there. I feel like his numbers all stack up with Christian McCaffrey and Zeke Elliott, and he's right behind them, or even a little above them in certain categories. And I also feel like that Kamara, if you don't have a guy like him, people think you can replicate him. I think it's hard to replicate him. They tried to replicate him. Tried to replicate Darren Sproles once they traded him after the 2013 season, and they didn't find a guy until they found Kamara. They went with Travaris Cadet and C.J. Spiller and some other guys I probably forgot about. So
C.J.
I feel
Spiller.
Yeah, exactly. They paid him more than they paid Mark Ingram to retain Mark Ingram in the same offseason. So there you go. So I feel like that the number, it's just the market. If you love the player, that's where you got to go. And then there probably could be some guys that go by the wayside, whether it's Marcus Williams or Sheldon Rankins in the offseason, and you just figure, all right, we'll figure out with safety, because they've never really retained a safety paying big bucks outside of Roman Harper, and he didn't really get big bucks. But, safety is a position they retain even less than even a running back.
Man, Larry, I love Alvin Kamara. This is such a conflicting argument for me, because it feels like you have to poo-poo the player, but we're still talking about one of the elite talents. But to say he stacks up to what McCaffrey and Zeke have done in their respective offenses, come on, man. Like, that's in what category?
If you look at touchdowns, yards per scrimmage, yards per touch, it's all there. It might not look that way. Look,
I'm not saying yards per touch, but I'm talking about when you talk about cumulative your impact on the offense, Larry. It's like, I'm
not looking at him as just running back guy. Look, Christian McCaffrey is their best offensive player.
Yeah.
Zeke Elliott, I'm not saying he's going to get paid as much, but he should be a tick lower. Like, okay. I value him higher than Derrick Henry, because I feel like Derrick Henry is a one trick, let's ram it down your throat kind of a guy. So I feel like he is a tick higher than those and a tick lower. So I would put him like third within that McCaffrey, Zeke,
You put him
Derrick
above
Henry.
Le'Veon Bell? I mean, because Le'Veon is sitting there, and
Now,
David
for
Johnson's
sure.
in that $13 million range.
I mean, those are bad contracts. But
Those are
those are
terrible
the
deals.
dangers there. I know those are the dangers.
That's my point. Those
I
are
know
terrible deals.
it's risk reward. I mean, when hey, the Texans, how much did they play old Osberger way back when? So sometimes you get a good deal, and sometimes the deal goes up in your face.
It's not Osberger, it's Osweiler.
I know his name is Osweiler, but
Did you really remember that? Or did you think it was Osberger?
No, I definitely knew it was Osweiler. I was just calling him the Osberger.
The fact that I even had to clarify points out how bad of a quarterback he was, because there's some people like, oh, I remember Osberger. I remember that guy.
Yeah, it's that guy in that movie or something. Yeah, it's like Keanu Reeves.
All right, hey, before you go, and we didn't get too deep into the Clowney stuff, but that's okay. Give us some perspective here on your latest piece, which is up at The Athletic, about Miles Brennan and his preparation to get to this point in his career.
Yeah, myself and Brody Miller, we kind of divvied it up. He did a profile more along the college years, and I went back a little bit on how he got to where he was through high school at St. Stanislaus and some of the training he did. And so, and I think part of it is that, the people that have known him the longest, I feel like Miles Brennan has some stigmas attached to him, even some stigmas that I didn't even bring up. Like his dad brought up, well, people look at him as having this last name and they think he's just kind of, this guy who comes from money and not willing to work and this, that, and the other. And so, I just wanted to kind of dive into that. And look, he's not someone I've never met the kid. I've never really done any big, deep research on him. And so I felt like I wanted to go see back in some of the days where he, played through some adversity on the field and how hard he worked off the field. And look, a lot of the conceptions where people think he's a little too much into the outdoors, I dove into that. So it was a really kind of fun piece that I got to do and really brought some interesting light just how hard he actually did work to get to where he is, and now he's going to be LSU's starting quarterback.
Larry Holder on Twitter at Larry Holder. You can read us at theathletic.com/New Orleans with us Tuesdays here during the football season. Appreciate it, Larry. Thanks, man. Have a great day.
All right, Matt. Talk to you next week, buddy.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.